Hello, gentlemen, ladies, and NBs. Welcome to IndieQuest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. We're back at it like a bad habit. My name is Josh. I'm one of your hosts today. I'm here with my wonderful, splendiferous co-host, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't fully know the context for splendiferous, but I imagine it's in the ballpark of like chill, and I'm chill. It's a good day. Just got back from a nice walk at the park, and now I've got my raspberry lime spindrift, and I'm ready to discuss some spooky games.
Seth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Actually, I kind of want to give an update on something that I promised at the beginning of the year. I know we got 2 months before the end of the year, but they won't all come to the podcast, I will say. I'll preface it by saying that I have officially gotten through 12 2023 indies, so I'm looking forward to our year-end stream, or year-end podcast.
That's awesome.
That's crazy, man. Way to go. I wish I knew how many I had. It's not 12, that's for sure. Maybe like 6?
It was my goal to try to do at least 10, so I'd have, I'm not planning on doing any specific top 10 of any kind, but I feel like that's a good amount to be able to draw from for an episode like that, I guess. For myself, I felt kind of goofy last year because I feel like I played like 3, and so,
So now you got a bigger pool to pick from.
more to draw from, so I'm happy about that.
That's awesome.
I checked because I do keep a list. All my spreadsheet people out there will know what's up. Depending on how you count some games as indie or non-indie, I'm right around 10. It depends on where you come down on like Clive and Wrench, like pretty indie.
Yeah,
but
I would say indie.
Yeah.
Or Chia, like Chia had that Sony bump, but it's indie, right? So
well, you brought it to IndieQuest, so I certainly hope it's indie. We're not going to pull any Shantaes.
Neither here nor there. It's too late. If you changed your mind, it's already written in the stone of the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm at. Honestly, I'm terrible at keeping, like, my spreadsheets are horrible. You guys would be ashamed, but that's okay. I think I'm around probably 10 as well. I think I would have to go back and look through everything, but it's going to be a good discussion either way once the new year hits,
Did you end up finishing off Sea of Stars, Josh? I know it's been a couple episodes.
Yeah, I played a couple more hours. I'm going to finish it. It's just like one of those things. Everything started piling up. Mario came out, and Spider-Man, and I was playing another game that we're going to talk about today too. So it's kind of like, stuff just started piling up.
And since we're on the topic, I'll ask you guys. Usually for me, November 1st is when I really start to feel this, where I exit spooky season, and then for 2 months, there's this intense, like, goaty pressure.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, there's no time to goof around. I can't be pulling some ridiculous N64 game out to play right now. Like, it's business o'clock.
Yes.
I need to be playing the 2023s that I want to play. And in your case, Josh, with Sea of Stars, it's hard because it's like, we've done the episode. You've played so much that you formulated an opinion. So it's like, it's hard to write yourself a check for like 8 more hours of that game when you could write yourself a check for an 8-hour game.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I think I'm down to like the last like 3 to 4 hours, honestly, and I'm going to beat it. I know, because I want to see the story through. I kind of know what happens. We did talk a bit about the ending, but I want to see it for myself. So definitely.
Just remember that the true final boss takes about an hour and a half. So be sure you have time.
Okay. Yes. Sounds like a plan. But it is spooky season, so we always do. I'm trying to segue. There was no natural segue, so I just jumped into it. It's Spooktacular. We've been doing this since the first year we did it, so we've been doing it every year consistently, which I think that's pretty cool. We always have like a Halloween celebration, awesome. So a thing we did in the past for these episodes is a thing called Pitch My Game. So I asked a couple people that we know for just a random list of games, and I'm going to throw them in a generator, and we're going to have a game title, and we're going to together pitch 2 different games together. Does it sound fun?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm for it.
I also have, if we can't think of anything that sounds good with the title or anything, I have a genre generator too that we can hit if we want. So,
cool.
Sound fun?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So the first person I got some answers to, or just some names. I was just like, dude, this is a weird request. I want just a bunch of random fake horror game names. Just throw them at me. I contacted a few people. We got 2 responses. One was Guido, which new game, old fame, you And then we got Top Spot. So
awesome.
They sent me. If you don't know Top Spot, he has a YouTube channel. Check it out. And so first off, we're gonna do Guido. So I have the generator on my phone, and we're just gonna hit the button. Whatever name pops up, we're gonna pitch a game together.
All right.
Let's see. You might be able to see this. I don't know, but it is called. You can't see that. It is Mistwoods. That's the name of the game. That's our fake indie game we're pitching together today. So, what is Mistwoods?
You can do a lot worse with a fake game name than Mistwoods.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
that's a pretty sick name, honestly. Someone out there should probably take that for their game.
It's not bad. I haven't heard a game called that, so that's nice. So, do you guys want to do a genre, or do you just want to try to figure it out on our own?
I mean, I kind of initially I came up with something. Something popped into my head as soon as I heard Mistwoods, and that is it was developed by one guy who loves Silent Hill. Small budget. You're just in a woods, and there's a lot of mist, and obviously stuff comes out of the mist as it does in Silent Hill. But the fog is like, that PS1 fog where it's like right ahead of you. That really works well for. But I feel like, and I'm sure it's been done in the indie space, but it's something that really could be done again because it's just a very fun limitation of those old systems that could be brought back. Kind of reminds me of the pseudo regalia type thing, but utilize that graphical style, but out in the woods with a bunch of fog and make it scary.
Yeah, I'm seeing tank controls. This screams tank controls for sure.
Yes.
You could almost treat it like, to keep going Silent Hill style, like, imagine that the thing, this is definitely born out of the game that I'll be talking about later, but like, imagine that creatures that wander into the fog become like twisted, unrecognizable versions of themselves. Like, you have all the creatures of the forest, and the ones that wander into the fog, like the squirrel becomes something like almost unrecognizable as a squirrel, in the same way that Silent Hill has the like horrible like rust chain link fence version.
Right.
It's almost like you could combine those into one livable space using the mist.
With this in my head, I'm imagining it as a first-person game. I don't know why. Is that just because horror is better in first person a lot of times? Like, it's a little more immersive, maybe?
I would assume in my head, because of the like PS1 aesthetic, I would have guessed third person.
Third person, yeah.
Yeah, but I agree that first person horror tends to be my favorite.
Yeah, first person. It's because from the first person perspective, it limits your view, right? You can't see what's behind you, so they can always hide something behind you. You're always looking behind you. Whereas third person, you can usually kind of see behind you, right? And it's more like, oh, I'm seeing with my eyes in first person, so it lends itself to that scary spookiness. So,
his name is let's see, it's a male protagonist. His name is Reggie.
Fils-Aimé.
I almost wanted to say that too. I was like, Reggie Watts or Reggie Fils-Aimé both popped in my head when I said that.
We were either both going to say Fils-Aimé at the same time, or we were both going to say "and the full effect" at the same time.
So that's Mistwood. Find it on a shelf near you, I suppose. It's a $3.99 on itch, and that's it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a couple hours to get through. Not too bad.
A solid side quest game.
Aren't they all?
All right. So Top Spot sent more selections, so I have a decent amount from him, and I think there might be something good here. Let's click this generator button and see what Top Spot has for us. The game title we're going for today is from Totspot. It's called Alas, Another Zombie Game.
Okay. So immediately I get like the early Xbox 360 arcade, the I made a game with zombies in it, sort of not really scary, probably more like arcade retro inspired, but using the aesthetic of zombies and Frankensteins and stuff like that. Think like a much jankier Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, I was
made on a much smaller budget and like in 2008. That is the game that I would envision here.
Yeah, I'm thinking like cut out realistic like pictures of people with little zombie makeup on them, and there's bullets and stuff that comes out of them, and you kind of like move a dude around like Vampire Survivors, pretty much a survivor's license or an ass game, auto shooting survival game. So
Yeah, you guys nailed it. That's I feel like indie developers are kind of leaning towards those. It's almost funny, memey titles. Like you see a lot of those titles on Steam now where it's like, oh, okay. You know? It's very like, I thought 3 seconds about this, but it's funny, right? Like, you know, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And much longer titles too,
Yeah.
like full sentences
Right.
as your title. Again, a specific reference for a certain type of person, but indie games have names that feel like the name of Fall Out Boy songs. They're like
super long,
15 words long.
Yeah.
And they're like a little joke.
You know, honestly, this gives me an idea. So what about this? I do one of the names from Weedo, and then we do a colon, and then the second part of the title is the other name from Topspot. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Sound like a plan?
All right.
And we'll do a genre too. Why not? Let's just do it. Okay.
We'll close it out on the 3 stay.
Yeah, let's do it. So, from Weedo, we got Isolating Terror. And then the colon is... It's not working. The Edge of Rapture.
That's great.
Isolating Terror, The Edge of Rapture. Sorry.
All right. And we're going to get a genre
too. Yes, let's do that. Let me grab that. I just have a bunch... Literally just have tabs on my phone for these things. Hold on.
I know in my head I know what genre I would expect. So
Mascot platformer.
I wish.
That's on the generator, so you never know.
That would be funny.
3D platformer.
Oh, baby.
Killing it.
Way to go, man. Crushed it. All right. So we have a 3D platformer named Isolating Terror, The Edge of Rapture. It's like... It's not... This has to be something that is not maybe like Team Meat, but like Team Meat inspired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we have our Binding of Isaac, our Super Meat Boy. So, like, what's the 3D platformer version of that kind of exists in that, like, gross out, intense space?
Yeah.
Right.
Ed McMullen teamed up with the Ukulele guys to make a game. This is it.
All right.
What do you think?
they went from ukulele to the end of Rapture.
Yeah. And it has that very similar, like, Binding of Isaac / Meat Boy vibe to it. Why not?
All right, so it's Isolating Terror, right? So here's what it is. Ukulele style. The title is Isolating, and it's 2 googly eyes. and terror, like a piece of paper. So it's a piece of paper with 2 googly eyes on it. And that's your buddy mascot platformer that you play around in all these friendly post-apocalyptic, you know, immediately post-Rapture worlds.
That's hilarious. So everything is like that shiny, cutesy version of, you know, like the Link's Awakening type art style, but just trying to be bloody and gruesome, but isn't, you know, at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's all in the range of like a little ceramic haunted house that your mom would put out as a Halloween decoration.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's perfect.
Yeah.
You guys will find this game. What is it again? Isolating Terror. The End of Rapture? I already forgot.
That's it. You nailed it.
Rapture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, knowing Edmund McMillan, like, It'll be on everything. It'll be on Steam, Itch, Epic. There'll be a Kickstarter for a board game.
Yep.
It'll be like just a full multimedia franchise.
Win for that Netflix show too.
Yep. Yeah, the characters, because of the ukulele folks, the characters will appear in like every other game. There'll be a cameo from Isolating Terror in Shovel Knight 2.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fun.
It was good.
Yeah. So I'll plug the two people that helped us out today. Weedo, it's called New Game Old Flame. Listen to that podcast. It's really good. They take games that are new, releasing on old platforms, and talk about them, which is great.
And so, really, technically, they're talking about all indies.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
It's just a different spin on it from what we do. They're covering it from a different angle, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then Top Spot 123, he has a great YouTube channel about collecting and like cool little pointers and stuff about collecting, which is awesome.
Yeah, the legend. Top Spot's the best. Give him a sub.
All right, so we do this thing on IndieQuest where we bring some indie picks and we talk about them. We put them on the quest log, which is our ever-growing list of awesome games you should check out. Today, it's all horror/spooky-ish themed games. So who wants to go first?
I feel like I should, because you already know what mine is. There's no dramatic tension to build up towards.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel that Drachma's got a look on his face where he's like, I was going to go first, you son of a...
Unfortunately, no one at home can see my face, but I was going to volunteer to go first, but I'm more than happy for Steve to go.
I was pissed. Yeah, he was pissed. He's going to be... If he disagrees with or pokes fun at me for the rest of the episode, you'll know it's because he's so mad that I stepped on his toes to budge in line.
It's also my favorite pastime to poke fun at Steve, but...
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, folks. The listeners don't know what I brought, but YouTube certainly know what I brought. And that is a 2023 indie horror fishing game, Dredge. All right?
Okay.
We went with modern, all right? I checked 2 boxes, indie and 2023 contenders, so we're looking good.
Oh, yeah.
Dredge is released by Black Salt Game. It is, in terms of genre, it's like a fishing adventure game. That'll make more sense as I get into it. And it was released, I don't actually know when it was released. I think a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I should have looked it up ahead of time, but it was released mid-2023 or early 2023. And it had a little bit of buzz, I think. This is, as far as I can tell, it is the first game from Black Salt Studios or Black Salt Games. And I would say for a first outing, it got pretty popular. Like a lot of people in my circles and a lot of people on Twitter were talking about it. It sort of had its moment. So a lot of you out there may have already seen it or played it. But it is both fishing and horror. But as we get into it, you'll hear that the balance of those two things is maybe a little different than what I was expecting. So we'll get into the main game loop here. So like I say, it is a fishing game. And the way that plays out is you start the game and you are a fisherman out on the ocean with no real context as to who or why you are out there. But you show up on this island and you pull into port for this small village called, it is a small village, but it's called Greater Marrow. And you land, and basically the mayor of the town is like, actually, you don't even pull into port. You crash on the rocks outside of town and outside the lighthouse, and then you kind of limp your way to the docks. And the mayor's like, oh, we need a new fisherman. You can be our fisherman. And also, we'll give you a new boat to go do that. But you'll have to pay us back. So it's got like a Tom Nook style vibe going on. And that really ends up not being that big of a deal because you agree to the terms. You say, thumbs up, I will be the fisherman for you. I will do fishing. And so you take your ship out into the bay and out in the water. So it's open, kind of like you can free roam in your boat out anywhere into this like cluster of islands. And you'll come across these pools of fish, or pools of sea life, because it's not always strictly fish, but it's pretty much always fish. And when you're over them, you can press square to start fishing up, and you play a little mini game. And there's 3 or 4 different mini games that you play, but they're all pretty basic. If you imagine like it's not that much more complex than like something from like a Sea of Stars or a Legend of Zelda or something like that. It pulls up this little circle, and you usually have to time button presses to pull in the fish. And you get the fish up onto your boat, and then you have a like Resident Evil 4 style inventory of the space on your ship. So you need to like rotate and twist fish around to fit them onto your boat in both a optimized way, but also, just a pleasing way, just a satisfying way where you're like, I tucked the perfect amount of fish in right there. That's so good. They know it's satisfying too, because as an aside, there's a trophy or / an achievement for like completely maximizing your space, like leaving no single square unused. They know that you're like, yes,
that's awesome.
So good. So, well, the reason that you're fishing is because you can go back to the town then, and there's a fishmonger there, and you sell your fish. And different fish are worth different amounts. Different size fish are worth different amounts. Like you can get trophy fish and things like that. And then there's also aberrations to the fish that you can catch. So it's got a Lovecraft element here. That's not a spoiler to say.
Yeah.
It's very Cthulhu adjacent. And as you're fishing up into these pools, you quickly realize something's weird in this group of islands, because you'll start pulling up fish that are aberrations of the ones you're familiar with, and they're just weird. So like sometimes it's like they're inside out, or sometimes instead of an eye, there's just like an endless void that sucks in all light. Just weird, kind of haunting, otherworldly descriptions of these fish. And then those sell for a lot more and sort of get your brain like, what is really going on here? Kind of like our game Mistwood.
Yeah.
There is a pretty front and center day-night cycle, and they tell you right out the gate, they're like, don't go fishing out at night, don't go out at night, it's dangerous out at night. And if you do stay out too late at night, the fog will roll in, and the later you stay up, the more your character will start to feel panicked, and then air quotes, scary things start to happen in the depths of night and in the midst of the fog. So there are, creatures of unknowable origin. There are hallucinations that you'll encounter. There are, like you'll be driving and the game will pop up like a fake set of rocks that you almost crash into, and you have to like swerve out of the way last second. There's a lot of little like sanity tricks that the game pulls on you if you stay out fishing too long. And so what you usually end up wanting to do is just fish during the day and then sleep at a port or on a dock at night, to both prevent your panic from going down, or your sanity from going down too much, and also to avoid the greater dangers that lurk in the deep.
Are the variations of the fish easier to find at night, or do you find them just as easily during the day and it's random?
I don't know that they are easier to find at night, because there's actually certain fish that only appear during the day and only during the night.
Oh, okay.
So I think they probably do pull up more often, or at the very least at night you can see, like you can confirm if one of those fish is in one of the pools that you're fishing out of. It has like a little extra emitter that isn't visible during the day.
Right.
But you don't notice it so much because you are usually hunting for a specific type of fish over like those aberrations. And you also, there's spots in the game that say that you have to execute the mini game perfectly in order to catch one of those aberration fish. Although I don't know that I found that to be true in practice. It felt like it was just kind of like it's almost like shiny hunting in Pokemon, but with a lot higher odds, where it was like 1 in every 10 or 1 in every 15 fish of a certain type you'd catch would be an aberration of that fish. And Pokemon is a very relevant pull here, because there is an encyclopedia of all of the different types of fish, and there's literally combined between the aberrations and the regular fish, there are literally 151.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
So like they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously.
There can be no doubt that they were aware, and they must have been designing it. They got to like 140, and they're like, all right, well, we have to.
It's like, it's like
we have to whip up 11 more fish.
Yeah, and they're like, Greg, we can't call it a Fishadex. You can't call it that. You have to just call it an encyclopedia. It's okay.
Yep. All right. It's just not possible. And there are a couple of variations on fishing that you can do, like you can get crab pots that you can drop, and you don't have to like actively do anything with them other than like when you come back and enough time has passed, they'll be filled with crabs, and you just have to make sure that you're regularly emptying them. And then they do break down over time. After like 3-4 days, you'll need to upgrade, or you'll need to repair them before you can drop them back out again. Same thing, you get like a trawling net that just passively catches fish instead of like actively having to, and it's the same thing that it starts to slowly break down over time.
So is there any true benefit other than different types of fish to staying out at night? Or is it just always more dangerous and you just never want to do it? Because I feel like when there is something that's more difficult in a game, usually there's a benefit to doing that thing.
I think other than the unique types of fish and the occasional like story or quest objective that requires it to be at night,
okay.
No, there's no real advantage to going out fishing at night other than to like see what is happening. You know, it's like fun fishing game during the day, spooky fishing game at night.
Right. I feel like it would pique my curiosity and I would want to stay out. But if you were a very efficient gamer or you didn't want to see the nighttime stuff at all, you could just skip that portion of the game altogether for the most part and be good to go.
Yes. And so usually when you find yourself out at night, it is not on purpose. So the way that the game is set up is you start out and your fishing ship moves very slow to the point where like this is like a cluster of like 5 different main islands. It would take you like over 24 hours, probably over 48 hours to go from the center island out to one of those other islands. You're just too slow. But as you are exploring the world, you'll also get dredge equipment to dredge up like objects and materials. And one of the things that you can find dredging or get from quests are these things called research parts. And then you can use research parts to develop better equipment for your ship. So that's things like you can develop faster engines. You can develop lights that will illuminate a certain amount of the fog in front of you if you're out at night, things like that. And so you end up wanting to upgrade your ship, but inevitably you kind of like run into your own limitations where you maybe stay out fishing too long, or you try to make it from one island to another that it turns out you really couldn't make it to in time. And so you'll find yourselves out for, until midnight or 1 a.m. through your own sort of like carelessness or lack of planning. And that's when you need to do the avoid thing.
I gotcha.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. In addition to those research parts, you also get these, you can also dredge up like certain materials, things like wood or spare metal parts and stuff like that. And you'll combine those at one of the major like port hubs. I think like the dry dock to upgrade like the total amount of capacity that your ship has to carry. Like you can upgrade your hull, or you can only slot engines, because engines and your fishing rod and everything, they're objects that you have to have on your ship in your cargo. Only a certain number of those squares are like allowed to be engines, and you can upgrade how many of those squares can be engines so that you can actually equip multiple engines to move faster, stuff like that. So it's got this like upgrade loop going the whole time where you're sort of spending time fishing, spending time dredging up materials and research parts and also some other stuff that you can sell, and upgrading your ship so that you can get further, fish more efficiently, or when you buy better rods and stuff, fish like unique types of fish, because not everything is accessible. Like at first you can only fish in shallow or coastal water, and you need to research and upgrade the ability to fish like out in the deep ocean, or there's certain like biome specific fishing that you can do like in like a swampy marsh or a volcano, stuff like that.
So I know you mentioned quick, I'm assuming you're going to be shifting away from gameplay shortly. So you mentioned that the fishing is fairly friction free and easy. Is it any more difficult to get like the rarer fish, or is it just about the equipment that you get?
It is more, the equipment opens up kind of like the broad classification of fish, but the rarer fish just come down to how long you spend finding them. Like there's probably fewer pools of, hammerhead sharks. So it'll be harder for you to come across one as there is for, cod or guppies or stuff like that.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. And the actual crux of the game, the main quest that you're on, is very early on. You meet this mysterious figure called the Collector, who is searching for this set of ancient relics. And it just so happens that each of the islands in the area that you're on has one of these relics, or is believed to have one of these relics. And you're finding them and returning them back to him, which is, in a Lovecraftian game, returning mysterious objects of unknown origin back to a shadowy figure is always a good call.
Yeah.
So that is the main quest that you're on. And then you also pick up a whole bunch of other quests too, where you will need to ferry people from one island to the other, bring them materials, or the mass majority of quests are people in different contexts asking for a specific type of fish. So they'll be like, oh, I need these 2 crabs, and it'll show you a silhouette of the crabs, and then you have to work out what those are, and then where you can fish them, and then go get those crabs and bring them back.
Nice.
So far it sounds like a pretty chill and cozy, just I'm gonna go fishing type of game. It takes a turn, I'm assuming, right?
So here's my comment on Dredge. I won't bury the lead since you asked. I played it, and it is pitched as a spooky game. I wouldn't even call this an October game. It's weird because it's cozy fishing during the daytime, and then it's theoretically spooky at night, but pretty quickly you kind of learn to video games your way around the scary stuff, and it's not that scary.
Right.
It's a pretty bright, colorful game. So the spooky level is turned down pretty low relative to what I was expecting. I would say the perfect time of year to play Dredge is the last week of September, because it would be cozy, start of fall fishing with just a little taste, a little amuse-bouche of horror, to get you into the spooky season. But it is not. I don't want people going into it being oversold on the horror Lovecraft stuff, because in reality, it's not that intense. It's not that horrifying. And also the game actively encourages you to avoid it, right? They're fit or sleep during the night. Don't go out during the night. So you play a pretty good chunk of the game just doing daytime fishing. It's not too scary at all. Now that said, in the small bag of tricks that they have, they do some interesting things with some of those sanity effects. I wouldn't want to spoil them for people because again, it's a pretty small handful of tricks that they have, and I've already mentioned a few, but they do have fun with it in a way where you're not going to be oh, that's scary, but there were a couple things where I was oh, that's clever of them. Kind of like them throwing up fake hallucinated rocks that make you anxious to drive full speed. That type of thing where they're the game does mess with you in some pretty clever ways.
Yeah, so it's occasionally there's a little thing that might make you feel a little uneasy, but you're not going to be shivering in your chair playing this.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you do happen to get into a sticky situation, or if you just recklessly boating around, you can take damage on your ship, and then you just need to fund repairs for it by selling more fish. So it's not too punishing of a game. And I think maybe I died once. Maybe, and it just spawned me back at the nearest dock with no penalty, so it's not. It's a non-offensive death in that type of game. But so that's kind of the general loop of it. It's a 10 or so hour game. It can go a little longer. I entered my Pokemon mode, so I had to catch them all. So I filled my Fishadex, got everything, all the aberrations, stuff like that. And they do give you a lot of tools to help you find certain types of fish. And it was actually pretty fun to go for 100% completion on it. And you start to unlock some abilities, as weird as that sounds for a game where you entirely play as a fishing boat, but you unlock some neat abilities that you can use at various points in various contexts. So it's pretty good. I will say, I said it's a pretty colorful game. It is that is one of the things that I think you could argue it pulls from the scariness.
Yeah.
Like it is
Gorgeous.
using the full color palette. It's not muted. It's very like
Mm-hmm.
Artwork is very like painted. In fact, the character portraits have a really nice like painted look to them. The character portraits kind of remind me of like a less intense version of like Disco Elysium character portraits. But then the game itself, it's got this like, it's not like a low poly aesthetic, but it's not trying to be high fidelity, and it's all just very like nice, pleasing, like gentle colors. It's good.
It reminds me a little bit of like a warmer tones Wind Waker in a way. It's some of the pictures I'm looking at. It's not like the totally anime type aesthetic, I guess, that the Wind Waker's going for a little bit. But I will say, a couple of the screenshots I've looked at, we've talked about it in the past. If you're going to have a day-night cycle, you better have a killer sunset. And this game has got it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do not shy away from gorgeous sunsets. Also, gorgeous night sky. Again, a must-have in any good game.
Yes, for sure.
A lot of the fish artwork, as weird as that sounds, as strange a compliment as that is, the fish artwork is quite nice, especially those aberrations. Like, one of the highlights of the game for me was just seeing all the like creative ways that they could like twist and disorient you and mess with your expectations about these fish. And all of them have very just very Lovecraftian kind of like haunting descriptions, like a 1 or 2 sentence description of the fish, and it's always it's good writing. It feels like almost like if you're reading like a D&D monster manual. It's just like a good mood setting description of that creature. Nice. Which is pretty nice. So yeah, it looks good. It's a very pretty game. Again, for a first outing for this studio. Now, I think that it's a new studio, but I think that the developers do have like prior game dev experience at other studios, maybe even AAA studios, because it looks great, it runs great, buttery smooth, 60 FPS, at least it was on PS5. So yeah, it is a very pleasant time, which is a weird thing for me to be talking about on the horror episode.
Yeah.
I was expecting it was going to be like they give you a little bit of joy and then they yank that away from you. But in reality, it's like they're like, well, what if Harvest Moon was just a little scarier at night?
Yeah.
What if in Stardew Valley, at night it got a little spooky? And I'm like, That'd still mostly just be Stardew Valley. That's fine.
I mean, okay, so how's the soundtrack? Is it like creepy and spooky, or is it like nice and like bright and cheery? Like, does that add to it or anything?
The soundtrack definitely adds to the sort of like foreboding nature, the like haunting vibe of the game. It's a lot of piano and strings, very sad, a lot of minor chords and stuff like that. It is really good. Quite pleasing. It's the type of thing that you could definitely put up like while you're working or something and vibe out to, get some work done. The whole time. I was never like listening to other music or anything. It was always quite good. Although there is, again, to kind of yank you back and forth between this scary or not scary vibe. There's like this extremely jaunty music that plays when you're like at the dock or doing some like selling or upgrades, where it's like, what is happening here? It's like, why are we having so much fun? And suddenly I'm in like a port town in a JRPG. It's like, okay, guys.
I often wonder during those parts, especially in indie games, if they like commissioned somebody to do the music and they gave them, here's what we have. And then they look at the game and they're like, well, there's nothing really here that fits this section, but this one's close enough, and they just throw that there.
Yeah. You may very well be correct. So, yeah, it is, like I said, it's a pretty tight experience. If you ignored a lot of the quests and just sort of mainlined research and the main quest, I bet you could get through it in like 8 hours. It's really not too bad, and it's never difficult, even though it is pretty clever at times. So, before I get to my final conclusion, any lingering questions from the panel of hunks?
I think you did a good job explaining it. I have dabbled in some writings about it. I guess I've read a couple things, because it's a big game for this year. I mean, it was on more than just our close friends' radar. I suppose I watch a couple different outlets on YouTube, and Dredge was, it's certainly a pretty big, important indie for 2023. And I've heard really good things. So I'm interested to hear where you will put it on the quest log.
Yeah, I same here. I've heard many people talk about it. It's very highly regarded. So where are you going to put it?
So Dredge.
God, I'm so sorry, Dredge. I feel like it's going to happen to you too.
How does one divorce their expectations and the product that they were sold versus what they got? Here's the thing. I think that the top line that this game is sold on is that it is horror fishing, but it is fishing horror. Like, it is completely askew in that. Now, don't get me wrong. The fishing is satisfying and it is relaxing, but like, is that what I was looking for in this game? Like this Lovecraftian fishing game? Like, there's other games where I can relax and enjoy fishing as well. And I would say that the loop of fishing was relatively straightforward and relatively frictionless. So it's one of those games where I don't have much negative to say about it, but it's like, it just doesn't quite like, I don't know that this game will be like something that I pine for years from now, wishing I could play it again for the first time in the way that I do a lot of my main quest games.
Yeah, you're not going to be like Outer Wilds and Dredge. That's not going to happen. Yeah.
It's one of those games where I would recommend it to people pretty easily. I'd be like, oh, you should check out Dredge. Dredge is cool. And it's pretty possible that Dredge will show up in my game of the year, like my top 10 or game of the year considerations, because it's very cool. But I'm going to give it a side quest. It's like a great B+ is how I would describe it. It was really good, but not a core shaker.
I'm trying to think if there is a single game that I know Steve missed some time this year having a baby, but I'm trying to think if there's a single game that Steve brought to the show alone this year that was a main quest so far. I cannot think of one.
I am kind of a...
You balance me out. You balance me out. Right.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. We work together quite well. I will say this, and I don't know if either of you are going to bring it or not. So I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I was pretty on the fence about Dredge. And then the game that I started right after Dredge, which is also indie and horror adjacent, put in perspective in my mind where that dividing line is, and it put Dredge just below the fold.
Okay. So I think I know what game you're talking about because I glanced at your PSN, but I'm not going to mention it. Maybe the captain brought it. Who knows? And if not, it might show up on a future episode. So as we're talking, I'm looking at the main quest. I'm like, okay, what's the last one that I brought? The last time I brought a main quest game was episode 47, which was Tinykin.
That was definitely last year.
Yeah.
Last year. Well, I brought Sea of Stars and Super Meat Boy, both of which are main quest games.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can take credit for it. That's fine.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Okay. But yes, at least at this point in my life, I'm going to give a very hearty recommendation for Dredge on the side quest. It is cool. Just know going in what you're getting. And I think actually if you do that, you might even have a better time, and it might be more of a main quest for some folks. Certainly don't begrudge people that really, really love this game. I only really loved this game.
Right. And I do want to just put that out there. Side quest is still a recommendation, but it's just not like a damn, this is the best game. I have so much amazing things to say about it, I guess, right? So
yeah, there's a whole filtering process. By the time it gets to this show, it's already a recommendation.
Yeah,
so.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yep. That's Dredge, boys. What do you got for me?
Well, You can go next, Captain, because I know you were kind of itching to be the first one. So what you got for us today?
I just, I was thinking maybe I'd go. Nobody ever jumps in, but today Steve was just raring and ready to go. So, but
Yeah.
Maybe I should do
Today.
it once in a while. Be like, oh, I got a game. Let's go.
yeah. I can't wait for that day where Josh is just like, I am going right now. Like, okay, Josh, take it away. All right.
All right.
All right. So, I have mentioned before, specifically to you two, but I think I've talked about it a little bit on the show. I am not a big horror game fan. So, I will often pick, something that's horror adjacent. I did last year. I played Beacon Pines last year, which, one of my favorite games of last year. Steve also played Beacon Pines. I know Josh played a little bit of Beacon Pines. I thought it was going to be spookier than it was, and it was, at the end of the day, sort of like Dredge. Like, there were parts that were kind of trying to scare you, but it was really in a teenager, type of growing up story. But this year, I went in knowing that I was going to pick something that was going to scare me a little bit, or at least would hopefully attempt to scare me, because I'm trying to expand my horizons a little bit. So, I am very curious. I know that I did not play the game that Steve is talking about on PSN, because this game is not on PSN.
Okay.
I don't even know what the game is that Steve was talking about, but I know that it's not this game.
It starts with a I. Inscryption.
Oh, Inscryption. What is that, a 2021 game?
I think so.
We don't have to talk about it right here.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, I played Amanda the Adventurer. Have either of you heard of Amanda the Adventurer? Yes. That's awesome. I can't believe you guys.
No.
I never heard this once, so.
I really want you guys to look this up before I get going, because, and anybody at home, if you aren't driving a car right now, please look up Amanda the Adventurer on your phone, on your computer.
I saw a screenshot of this game
This is wild.
at some point, and I remember, instantly from the screenshot, I was like, I have to play whatever this game is. It's so unique. It's like
It's $9.
it's like
I gotta play.
Yeah.
It's
It's
basically
7,
like-
I think, isn't it? I thought it was 7. Maybe it is 9. I could be wrong.
It says $8.99, but
Oh,
like-
okay.
you know those YouTube videos for kids where
Yes.
the family finger stuff. It's like that
Yes.
art style.
So I played through this game, and there's a few times where I'm like, this would be this is the perfect length. Sometimes I think about my games in Steve Stream analogy or something. This would be a great Steve Stream game because it's the right length and the context is good. I mean, for a spooky in the future type thing. But as you guys probably can tell, and anybody at home can tell, Amanda the Adventurer on the surface does not look like a horror game. It literally looks like a children's edutainment game or something. Like, that's really what it looks like. Or it looks like a children's show. Cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's like CGI that you would see when you're bowling, like the little strike animations and stuff.
Exactly.
It's that
that's
grade
perfect.
of CGI. Yeah, that's
So I wasn't actually, I was going to mention it later, but I will mention it now that you said it, Josh. It reminded me, and these are two pretty obscure references, but the graphical style of Amanda the Adventurer itself reminds me of Cubics. Do you guys ever watch Cubics when you were younger? It's like
I'm familiar with the Game Boy Advance and GameCube games.
Yes.
But yeah.
Or Beast Wars Transformers.
Oh, yeah.
That computer
or the
cartoon.
Donkey Kong Country show. Come on.
Or that. Yeah,
Yes.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yes. So, Amanda the Adventurer came out April 25th, 2023. So, yes, this is another one of my 2023 games by Mangled Maw Games. Platform is PC. And I don't think it's on anything else. I don't think it'll ever come to anything else. It would not make sense. It's very much a point and click. I guess it could work on something else, but mouse and keyboard, it made sense to play on mouse and keyboard. Overview, it's a 90s themed horror escape room. So, usually...
Say more words like that, my friend.
Yes, I know.
Butter my biscuit, why don't you?
I know. So usually I will talk about gameplay first, but honestly, what I just said is a lot of what you're going to get out of the gameplay, and I'll talk about it more later. I would prefer to talk about the presentation now, because there are two very separate portions of this game that you have to kind of navigate. So you play a character that inherits your dead aunt's house, and all you get for context at the beginning is your dead aunt says, if you're interested, go into the attic. There are VHS tapes up there. Watch them. If you do, there's no turning back. And that's all you know. So you play the entire game in an attic. You don't go anywhere else. You're walking around first person, which is funny. Josh and Steve, both of you, I guess we were talking about the whole first person view. I played a game that's first person view. It's escape room, right? And a lot of those, unless it's like a point and click, but this is very much first person. You're walking around. There's nothing on your screen except for your mouse cursor, which is hilariously like a cartoon mouse cursor like you would see in like Putt or the other edutainment games like that, right? And you see, there's some stuff on the shelves. There's, like an easy bake oven thing. You're not quite sure what's going on there. You kind of look around. There's a pinup board, right? You kind of find out through just looking around and reading stuff that your aunt was some sort of like PI, private investigator. She's got, random clippings and stuff that are pinned to this board. So you can tell from the beginning, without even starting the game really, that she was researching something. You get some names that are involved and you're like, okay, something's going on here. Well, you walk over to the TV, which is a old school CRT VHS combo, which is awesome.
Love it.
It's just sitting at the end of the attic. It's like menacingly almost, because you start at one end of the attic and you see down the other side of the attic, and there's just this little TV down there, and it's a spooky game because everything about you've heard it's spooky, right? It's all in the description of the game. So you walk down there and there is a VHS sitting to the left of it. You grab the VHS, click on it, and put it into the TV, and off you go. You get to watch an episode of Amanda the Adventurer. So this is the second part of the game, right? Amanda the Adventurer is that cartoon for kids in the graphical style that we talked about earlier. It is very much Amanda saying, oh, hey, kids, what should I do here? And how in Blue's Clues and in Dora the Explorer, those characters always ask at the child, like, what do you think we should do? And then the kid can say something. That's exactly how Amanda the Adventurer is. There are certain parts where you can actually type, which, is something that as a kid I always wished I could do. I want to type my answer or whatever. As soon as you become like that tween and you're my little sister's watching those shows still and thinks they're awesome and funny, and I'm like, butt face, and then and she's like, you're right, and that's always the the funny thing when you're getting to that age when you can say silly stuff. But with Amanda the Adventurer, things are a little bit more twisted. You find out pretty early on that something weird is going on with this cartoon. Very early on, and I'm really trying not to spoil anything. People should play this, especially if you're into escape rooms. Very early on, she says some weird stuff about how should we cut this apple. And she has her pal Wooly, who is a sheep, who you see in a lot of like the advertisements for the game. He is constantly trying to he looks over at Amanda sometimes with things that she says and is like, that's not right, Amanda. We shouldn't tell them to do that, because she's like, how do we cut an apple? And you have to type in knife. And Wooly's like, well, we shouldn't tell them. Like, they need an adult to cut up an apple. And Amanda's like, it's fine, Wooly. And that's kind of the beginning. And I will say, without spoiling anything, it gets much, much more twisted as you play.
It's the creepy kid type of vibe, right? Where she just starts saying stuff that's just absurd, and then it just keeps going.
Yes. Yeah. It really reminds me in some of the spin on the VHS, like if you watch a trailer, you'll see some of this, but it reminded me of like creepypasta type stuff where it's like, there's this normal thing, but it's really weird. And Like, they twist the graphics sometimes. There really isn't music at all in this game. I'll talk about it now, but music in the attic section, there is none. It's just atmosphere. You're walking around, you can hear boards creaking, it's raining outside. But in A Man of the Adventurer, there's, upbeat, cheery music as you're watching the video. But the VHSs are all like partially damaged, and you can tell that, there's something going on with them, because you get staticky sections where things will just change to a different scene, and the music will get all distorted as you're playing, right? As it does in spooky type games. But that's something that I loved personally about this, is it really combined two genres, I guess, of things, like games, I guess, where it's like almost edutainment in a way, but with the horror thing. Like, I can imagine that if a kid got on their parents' PC and was like, oh, this game looks fun, I want to play this game, and they're 7 or 8, this is no kid should ever play this game. And there is stuff in the in the descriptions of the game where it's like, if you are a child, don't play this, because it's one of those weird things where it presents itself a certain way, but it is not that at all, right? So but do you guys have any questions about how the game looks or anything like that before we move on to more of the core gameplay?
No.
Okay. So, the story. We'll talk about the story first. I kind of talked about, how everything is happening with your aunt and everything. As you go on, you find out that your aunt was tracking something down. There's something going on with these VHS tapes, that there's miniature clues laid all over the place that kind of hint at what's going on, and you have to utilize those clues in the gameplay itself. But there's a grander thing that's happening here, and the only way to really find out what's going on is to continuously go through the gameplay sections. And within the gameplay, you watch a VHS tape. Amanda will, for example, the very first one is super basic, and it's going to happen to everybody within the first 3 minutes. So she basically cuts up an apple, and they're going to make an apple pie. Her and Willie are going to make an apple pie. As you walk into the room at the very beginning, you notice that there is a table sitting in the middle of the attic, empty. Just, there's nothing on it. Then you walk to the VHS tape and the TV, and you put it in. And she tells you, in order to make an apple pie, you have to turn the oven to 475 degrees. I can't remember. Maybe it's 375, but I did it a few times, but a certain degree, and for 40 minutes, and you need to put an apple in a pan, and that's how you make an apple pie. And then the tape ends, and you're like, okay. The tape just spits out, falls on the floor, and you're like, all right. You turn around, and it's not really scary, but it just caught me by surprise. You turn around, and all of a sudden on the table is an easy bake oven with fruit next to it, with a pan right there. And you go and walk, and you make the apple pie. Once you make the apple pie, as instructed, as Amanda told you to, you close the door, and it will open, and there's a new VHS tape. You take the VHS tape, head back to, and that is the gameplay loop. Your first playthrough will be pretty easy breezy. It's, not difficult at all. Most of the clues are like right in your face, and you're going to get to that ending. But that ending is not a good ending, not the one you want. So you will kind of keep coming back and discover more things as you play. There are hints hidden in the videos, right? So you kind of have to keep a keen eye and look for this stuff. For me personally, I'm not a big escape room fan or player, in video game form at least. I'm not a big point-and-click guy, so it was more difficult for me in certain aspects. I actually played it with Paige because she likes spooky stuff, so we were kind of sitting next to each other like, what do you think you're supposed to do here? And, well, did you see that over there? And it was kind of like, bouncing ideas, which it's always fun to play a game like that with somebody else.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to go into a lot more detail. All I will say is things are twisted. Things are not the way that they initially seem. And even though I went into it knowing that it was going to be kind of a twisted, spooky game, things happened very differently than I initially thought they would. And the puzzles, at least for me, got to be pretty tough, right? I mean, where you really have to be focused and really understand and look, you have to really check your surroundings for things and kind of put stuff together. But
that's awesome.
How long is, you said like, you kind of come up on a bad end and then you'll go through and piece stuff out. How long is like a loop? Like how long is that first playthrough?
To the bad ending is like 30 minutes.
Okay, so it's pretty fast. So
yes.
It's pretty obvious that you're back in and you're exploring and poking around.
Yes, because it's one of those games where in the bad ending, you get a hint at the very end before you get the bad ending. And then you utilize that hint. You see it on screen. You're like, oh, I remember seeing that thing in the attic. I need to use that to go use that, like open something in the attic, right? Because there are things around the attic that have combinations and codes and things, right? You get that ending and you're like, oh, I can use that. And then all of a sudden you can't move and something's happening, right? Then you get the bad ending. And then you get to restart. And honestly, at first I was like, do I have to go through everything again to be able to do that? But I was like, no, wait, I have this information now. I can utilize this information and go and open that thing. And then you start again, right? So you get that thing you get after the bad ending is extremely important piece of the TV that you can then use as you move forward. So.
Okay. Very cool. No, I like that. And you said like it's like a 3 to 4 hour in total experience? It
took me 4.5 hours to do everything, 100%. So, but I will say I've explained before, and I already explained during this episode, not my kind of game for the most part. So I certainly looked a thing or two up to be able to get 100%. I'm not even entirely sure how. Like, there's some very Easter eggy things that you don't have to do to get credits that I just wanted to see everything. I was just into the story at that point. So I looked some stuff up on how to do it. So.
Okay. I would normally say this at the very end because it fits more logically there, but the sooner in this description I say it, the better. I would almost warn people not to look at the Steam page too much.
Yeah, I agree.
Get some screenshots, but some of the trailers they're showing on the Steam page as we've been talking, to me, feel almost spoilery.
Yeah.
Like, they're showing a lot more than I would have expected. So I would say avoid that stuff. If one or two screenshots or our description sounds cool, maybe take that on faith because they're giving up more than I thought they would as I look at the trailer.
Yeah, they try. I think what they're trying to do, and that I will say that in the trailer, it's not like it's spoiling anything outright. It's not spoiling story beats or anything, but it's showing you it's the classic scary movie thing. How are you going to come in, watch my scary movie? Well, I'm going to show you a scary part, right?
Yeah.
In my advertisement. And that's kind of how they have their Steam page set up. Like, look at this. It's hard for me to say that A Man of the Adventure is downright scary. It's more creepy and twisted and psychological than really get you scared. Although there was one part, and it's crazy because you play through different loops, right? So you're going to see the same thing over and over again, but it allows you to speed certain parts up, right? So you're not just sitting and doing the same thing over and over. But there was one part that got me twice where I'm like, I even knew it was coming the second time, but you ever get scared where it's like a jump scare and you kind of lurch back in your chair and you get that it almost stems from your chest and goes out to your limbs, that tingly feeling.
Yeah.
This game can give it to you. It's not overly scary, but there are a few parts where it's like, oh okay. That got me. That got me a little bit. So
That's the best type of horror. I love that. That's the reason you partake in this media. So
yes, exactly.
I'm glad that you kind of went out of your comfort zone for this one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I definitely enjoyed my time with it. I'm glad I played it. Of course, added it to my 2023 games list, but this one has been on my radar since it came out. I've known that I was going to play this game for this episode for months. So, yeah, I'm happy to have been able to bring it. Any other questions before I put it on the old quest log?
I looking forward to hearing.
Yeah, I just want to mention when you Google this game, You know how Google has like the people also ask section with a bunch of questions? The first one is, should I let my kid play Amanda the Adventurer?
The answer is no.
Something I'll just point out, as if you're trying to sell the game to me. Steam has a more like this section. And I know that like algorithmically that's tuned to me. So like this isn't that big of a surprise. But the top 2 games that it says are like this game are Outer Wilds and Dredge.
I've never played Outer Wilds. It kind of surprises me.
I can see
that
the
it's
Outer
like
Wilds. Yeah, because it's like a loop that you redo and you're learning more information, I guess.
Yeah. I guess that does make it. Reminds me, I've only ever played one, but it reminds me of The Pass Within it reminds me of that typical escape room.
Yeah, kind of Rusty Lake is like a good touch point for people, I think.
Just spookier and tries to make you scared and just throws that weird kid video. Yeah. It's very, and that makes it so much creepier because, dolls are creepy and lots of clowns are creepy. Lots of stuff when we were kids we thought were creepy. And when they make something like this that was inherently a fun, happy thing when we were kids, scary, it gets you as an adult. So
it does, yeah.
All right. So the quest log. I am going to put Amanda the Adventurer on the side quest.
What a Steve move. I can't believe it. You're duking on the chest of this game.
It literally has nothing to do with the fact that this game is not a bad game. It's a wonderful game. I think the escape room genre almost lends itself to a side quest because it's a very quick beat. It's very, I don't know. I'm sure there are a lot of them that are very good. But we've mentioned before, lots of where we put on the quest log, the reasons we do it is because of our taste in games. If one of my co-hosts had brought this game, they might have made it a main quest. Not my favorite genre, but I will say that the story beats, the graphical representation, the 90s-ishness of this game. I loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I loved how it made me feel. I loved the story. So if you're into any of that type of stuff that I talked about, or you just want a really fun horror escape room game, this is definitely for you. But it will be on the side quest.
Awesome.
I like it. I like this trend of 90s like pop culture and technologies and stuff getting twisted on their head. All these developers that are basically my age making weird twists on my childhood is fun.
Yeah. Wow. And I will say too, I heard or was reading through some stuff afterwards that they may or may not, and it kind of ends on, there's more to be played, I will say, right? There's more to it. So I've heard that there might be a second one, which would be awesome. I would definitely be on that bandwagon. So
awesome. Well, I do have a segue here. It's the best to call them out when you have one. Speaking of things that are nostalgic, I brought a pick today.
Awesome.
No, I get nostalgic every time you bring it up. It reminds me of all the past episodes. So.
The last time you brought a game to IndieQuest.
Yeah, it's just like old times.
So the game I brought uses an early 2000s aesthetic. It is a third-person shooter. It just released, I think, September 26th. It's right in front of my face.
Oh, nice.
It is called El Paso Elsewhere.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
I've been very curious about this game.
Yeah.
So, this game is, the very, tried and true formula. The Max Payne light, or Max Payne like, is very similar in gameplay to that. You play a pill addict, narcotics addicted vampire hunter named James Savage. He's tracking down his ex-girlfriend Dracula. She's a vampire that's bent on ending the world. So pretty much the concept of the game, it's kind of a Max Payne-ish. You have the controls. The look of it is very 90s, 2000s. Everything is like flat polygonal. Think like Metal Gear Solid 1 face on, Solid Snake. That's the kind of face the main character has. It's voiced by the guy who is like kind of like the brainchild of the game, Xavier Nelson Jr. He like wrote the game. He does the voice acting for the game, which is like this, like Max Payne does, really close to the mic, mumbling like that, and which is really good. It's very excellent. Has little kind of cool cutscenes. This game just like oozes atmosphere. It's like just like kind of just cool. Like every time I play this game, I just feel like a badass, which it's very intentional. So you do have a dive. You can slow down time, so you can do the whole bullet time diving with dual pistols, shooting Dracula monsters, and that's pretty cool. You can there's a dodge roll. You kind of like it kind of does a thing where you start off with your dual pistols and then you slowly get a bigger arsenal of weapons to use. So you get like a shotgun, you eventually get like SMG, you get an Uzi, you get just all the types of weapons you could think of. You're in an El Paso hotel with 50 floors, which you find out it's not super obvious that it's 50 floors, but it ends up being 50 stages. And you go into it and it's just like kind of like takes his old memories, and then this is like the conceit to make this work. She is taking his memories and like putting them out into like a really weird like labyrinthine like levels. So one of the levels is just all bathrooms you've been to. So you're going through killing zombies in the bathrooms, and what you're doing is you're trying to get to these beacons that you can see, which are hostages, and you have to save the hostages in all the different rooms. So you're basically fighting your way to the hostages. You'll release them, and then you have to fight your way back to the elevator of this hotel, keep going down into like this nether vortex type thing, making your way down to eventually fight Dracula. So
nice.
Each stage, one thing I do have a criticism for this game is the assets do start to become a little repetitive because of the nature of the game. So you'll be like, okay, I've seen this bathroom 75 times. I've seen that chair 5 million times. But I think they keep the nature of the levels interesting enough to, when you go to the next level, you kind of want to just keep playing to see like what they come up with next. It does the same thing with the enemies. You'll start off with just like one like zombie vampire looking dude, and then you slowly get more enemies. Like each stage gets a little more hard, you get more weapons, and you get more bad guys to fight. So I would actually almost describe, I think he is on the record, the creator of the game is on record saying it's kind of similar to Quake. I would say, I know some people's ears are pricking up from that. But I can see that, because it's a lot of times you're kind of just running through areas, just mowing down dudes, just trying to make your way to the next area. I do think the game is pretty easy until you get to like the last maybe 15 stages or so, something like that. And it's not that hard, because you can usually just, okay, there's 5 dudes right there. I can kind of like slow down time. You can either dive and slow down time or just slow down time. And they're like, okay, I'll dodge this dude and shoot that guy in the head. And it's kind of just picking off dudes. But yeah, it's just a really fun time. Any questions about the game?
Yeah, you said that you're rescuing hostages.
Yeah.
One, is that like a Counter-Strike setting up the bomb thing? Is it like you have to find enough time to free them, or is it just like you get to them?
It's pretty much just you fight a bunch of dudes to get to them. You can kill hostages. By accident, I've done it, and I was like, I don't know if that was bad. I still don't know if it was bad. They don't really explain if that changes anything. Maybe it does, like a narrative thing or something like that. But you can kill the hostages, and it didn't have a negative impact on my runs per each stage. I was just like, well, if it's not going to have that bad of a problem, so I don't know. Maybe there's something there that changes the story. I'm not sure on that one.
Are there like achievements tied to saving all hostages or something like that?
Probably, yeah. I would say so. Okay. Yeah. So,
so you don't have to like protect them on the way back to the elevator or anything.
So you literally will see like a beacon, like, because like most rooms don't have roofs, which he comments on. He's like, that's weird. None of the rooms have roofs. So that's just weird way that they're showing me this weird thing in my mind, right? So you see a beacon, and you're like, okay, that's kind of like the signpost. I need to go that way and fight all the dudes to get to the hostages. So you're just like, all right. Another fun thing is when you roll, you can actually roll into furniture, and it drops stakes to stab the dudes. So you have like a really cool like 1-hit kill melee. Some of the bad guys are 2-hit kill, but a little spoiler, but not that big of a deal. There's like these statues, like armor statue dudes, and like some of them come alive, but you don't know which one. So it's always a surprise. So I just would literally go up to every statue and just start stabbing it with a stake, just in case it was a live one, you know? So, but you make your way to the hostages and you just hold down like the X button or a square or whatever, you know, that button. And the hostage just disappears. And then you just do the entire, like, so say a map has 4 hostages. So you just go through, save all 4 hostages. Everything turns like dark red and like the sound kind of feels like it's caving in on you. And then they just unleash like the monster closet. You just got to like fight your way to the other basically to the where you came from, basically. So that's where like the Quake feel, like the boomer shooter, I guess, feel of it is. It's like there's just like dudes coming out everywhere you're looking, pretty much. So yeah.
So are there difficulty settings? Is it a hard game the way you played it, or
to me, I think they've ramped it up pretty well to where like you're starting off, it's kind of like, okay, I died a couple times, and it does that thing where it just resets you at the beginning of the stage each time you die. Or if it's a longer stage, occasionally there'll be checkpoints. If the stage there are some that are like super long and more intricate, which actually have some puzzle elements where you have to get like these. They're hearts. They're literally just different colored hearts. So you'll see like a green like sludge over a door, and you're like, well, I can't go through that door. But you find the green heart, and you fight the bosses in that area to get through that door. Stuff like that to get to the next hostage to keep on trying to clear that stage. And I think that they do a good job on like, okay, here's some mechanics. Oh, here's a new gun. Oh, here's a new enemy. And by the time you like get to like, I don't know, stage 25, like midway point of this game, you're like, I just feel like I'm a monster. I'm just destroying everything, you know? So it's really cool.
Stages must go pretty fast then, right? There's 50 levels. Like, I can't imagine they take very long.
Yeah, I would say on average they take around 5 minutes, maybe 10. And the game took me around 8 hours to beat total, but I kind of played a little more after I beat it because I was still kind of enjoying just playing it, which is a good sign. And I think that they just do they were very thoughtful, I think, when it comes to the difficulty. I don't know if there's like an easy mode, but I would just recommend doing whatever's normal. I think it's just like, I don't even know if they have difficulty slider in this one, but they do a good job on ramping you up. But let me set the stage for you. Okay, so the guy who created this thing, he wanted to make a rap album. Like one of his dreams was, I want to make a rap album. So you're in like the second stage. You're fighting through some zombie. They're kind of like vampire zombies. They like kind of shamble around, you know, like in between, like transforming or whatever. And so you're killing those dudes, and then the werewolves start popping out. There's like these like jumping like spider looking werewolf dudes. And then as soon as they come out, it's like start blasting them, right? And then there's like this badass rap song just turns on, just like, you know, he's just rapping some crazy shit, and the music just swells, and there's a dude just pouring out of the walls, and you're just plowing through them all with shotguns, and yeah, it just has a good like cool feeling, like you just feel cool, you know.
Hey man, I love stuff like that. It's Sayonara Wild Heart syndrome, right? Like make a sick album and then make a game that I can play to you. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like this is just like, you can tell this person had a very specific vision of what this game was going to be. It really does just, it feels like a Remedy game. Like it feels like some dude from a Remedy was just like sitting in a closet somewhere, like, I'm going to make my own game, because it actually has like that, the title cards, the big giant font title cards pop up, you know, make a sound every single time you go into a new area. It has that, just like that world intrigue. You're like, why is that like that? You know what I mean? Why is that like that? You try to think a little deeper about the story, and the story is, I would say, it has interesting elements to it. I wouldn't say it's like the most like earth-shattering story ever, but I was kind of like interested to see this like love-hate relationship that the main character protagonist had with this like vampire god that wants to destroy the world, which I thought that was really cool. So, and also the healing is you eat pills, which is, you know, pretty very, very Max Payne. So, Let's see. Anything else I wanted to talk about? I think that they do a good job in changing up the formula. I was thinking for a while that the game was feeling a little repetitive. Like 2 to 3 hours in, I was like, this is kind of like the same thing. You're just like, you do the room, you do the hostages, and then you just make your way out over and over again. But they do start layering it on new elements. Like I said, the hearts and the keys to get to the next area. There's a couple of pretty fun boss fights too that come along too, which I had a good time with. So I think that all in all, it does keep it fresh enough to keep the gameplay interesting to the very end. Any questions?
I really like the graphical style, how it's that PS1, PS2 muddiness when you get close to stuff, but I can tell that they really utilize some of the frenetic action in a cool way because, I'm looking at some screenshots where your character is like moving and the cool blurring effects of like the bullets and the actual movement of your character through this like dated graphical style is a really cool contrast, I think.
Yeah.
I think it gives you that like 2002 like that vibe too. It actually feels like there's 2 soundtracks to the game. So there's the rap album, which is like a full rap album that's like an hour plus, and then they have like a score that feels like it's just ripped straight out of like the Matrix. It's like ding 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 ding, like that synth wave type stuff. And then like it just you look at the game, you know what the gameplay is going to sound like. It's what you imagine pretty much. So
super cool.
Yeah, this game was really fun. I had a great time with it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention, but like, I think that the cutscenes were really like, they were actually quite funny. I found this game funny. Like, okay, so you see the werewolves, you do the badass thing, right? And then like the next cutscene, he's like, wow, I was just in the bathroom and a werewolf tried to kill me. It's kind of crazy. Like that or something, it's like a little comment like that,
Yeah.
It's a little cheeky at times, I would say.
Kind of got the Marvel sense of humor. Sort of self-aware, nod and wink to camera.
Yeah. And a lot of it's very, him talking to himself is very like Max Payne still. You can see the inspiration. It's very overly poetic sounding. It's like, at the end of the world, who's gonna love me? Or, you know how it is, it's talking to himself.
Which is so funny that it's like that self-serious in a way. Cause, I only know this developer because they did, an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, which is like tonally the exact opposite type of game. So they're stretching their wings, man. I respect it.
Yeah. I think that I've followed this guy for a long time, and, I don't know. I haven't really played many of his games, but like when he was talking about this, I was like, this just sounds cool. I got to try it out. And
he pumps them out.
Yeah.
Like he's made 7 games in 2 years.
Yeah. Strange Scaffolds, his studio. And I think that like he was worried about like, oh, the game is going to bankrupt us. And there was like this whole thing. There's an interview on Remap Radio with him about it. It's pretty cool. So anyway, any other questions you guys have about El Paso Elsewhere before I put it on the quest log today?
No, I'm curious to know.
So this was me trying to say, okay, Josh, how did you really feel about this game? Was it a main quest game? Because I feel like I'm very lenient on games, and I'm trying to work on being a little more critical. But this game is, to me, kind of like a perfect, like excellent side quest game. I think that it's very fun, but go in knowing that it does have some times where you're going to feel a little bit of the repetition, just like with a lot of these types of shooters. And, but if you're in the mood for something, it is vaguely spooky, I would say. It has the vibes of Halloween for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not scary at all, though. It's more just kind of cool. And I think that if you want something that's a little self-serious, kind of gritty, kind of has that Max Payne feel. If you miss Max Payne, play it on a PC. Like if you were back in the day, you played Max Payne on PC, mouse and keyboard plays pretty good with this game. I thought it played just like that game. Worked really good on controller too. Played it on my Steam Deck as well. And so I think if you're itching for Max Payne, play this game, period. If you don't know what Max Payne's all about, check out some gameplay. And if you like those types of shooters like Doom or Quake or anything like that, I think you're going to have a good time just mowing some dudes down and killing some vampires. So, good time.
Nice pick. Heck yeah. And the triple side, man.
Yeah, rare.
Bunch of negative Nellies on this podcast.
Seriously.
Oh, we all did
Bunch
a
of
Steve
Steves.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. No one wants to be a Steve. Oh, God.
Hey, if everything's a main quest, nothing is a main
Yeah,
quest.
that's right.
That's true. What was the one you were giving me crap about? What was that game? I can't even remember the game. Fly Wrench. You're like, oh my God, Fly Wrench isn't a main quest? God, Josh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I like to give Drachma crap for putting Gungeon on the side quest more than anything.
Gungeon is an excellent game, just not for everybody. And
side
quest.
Where does Shantae go on this side quest or main quest?
Drachma's about to be like, well, you know, Valve self-publishes, so technically Portal 2 is an indie game.
Baldur's Gate 3. That's actually one I did think about. It's like, Larian, that's technically an indie game, right?
That would be...
If you were so jazzed that you had to talk about it, I would give you a hall pass on it.
Okay. All right. Well, I had a really good time today. I think we spooked it up pretty good. I mean, mildly with Dredge, right?
Only Seth did.
Yeah.
I tried. we kind of had the all ranges of the stack, right? Josh brought something that is Halloweeny but not scary. I tried to bring something kind of scary that wasn't, and then Seth actually delivered with something kind of scary. Thank God one of the three of us is actually doing their job.
I mean, sometimes you go into these games and you're hoping for that based on whatever the developer says about the game or the publisher says about the game. It's like, okay, they say it's horror, they say it's scary, and then you go into it's like, this isn't, they were just, so
yeah,
what can you do?
And I joke around, but I very highly value stuff like Josh, you bring in El Paso elsewhere, because not everyone is into horror. Like, it is a very specific, it's one of the most turn-offy genres for some people. So I think it's always really good to have games that people can play that are still in the spirit of the season, even if they aren't strictly scary. So we're bringing a good balance. Way to go.
Yeah, it gives you that Doom energy where it's like, this is kind of how a crazy effed up like environment with creepy blood and guts and adult material, like, oh, he's popping pills and stuff. Yeah. But awesome. So we brought 3 games today. We got 3 side quests. Dredge from Steve. We got Amanda the Adventurer from Captain Drachma, and El Paso Eswar from me. Check those out if you haven't. Also, you can check out the quest log, bit.ly/questlog, which I don't think we post or talk about too much lately. So figured I'd do that there. Also, I guess it's time to do plugs, because that's the time of the episode we're at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out, guys, today, getting our Spooker Dukers. And thanks for listening to the show. You can find me at Frantic Society on that platform, which is called Twitter. How about you, Steve? Where can they find you on the internet?
Twitch, Twitter, and I guess YouTube. I should probably mention too, since I've been making consistent videos. All as Blinkum. Blink OOM. M like Manda the Adventurer.
Right. Mandy. Old Mandy.
Good old Mandy. Seth, where can they find you?
You can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter and, of course, in the Polymedia Discord, best place on the internet. And want to mention, we always kind of beat around the bush on this. How do you actually get into the Discord, right? There is a Patreon. If you look up Polykill, this show that Steve is on, and then press space in Google, and then say Patreon, that's where the Discord is. So come and hang out with us. It's a couple bucks, but there's lots of friends.
Yeah.
Yes, the paywall exists to help us keep just a flood of bots and uninvested people from joining and muddying what is a very wholesome and I would say tightly knit community, but very accepting of new people into that ball of yarn at the same time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Honestly, the Discord's one of my favorite places to be, because I feel like I can literally talk about anything that's going on in my life, or video games or otherwise. So definitely check that out. Also, We want some community indie game thoughts, questions, or feedback for the show. If you have any, feel free to send us an email, IndieQuestPod@gmail.com, or send us a DM on our Twitter at IndieQuestPod, or you can follow us over there as well, just to keep up to date with the show. And we're also on Reddit, r/Polymedia Network. What's the Polymedia Network all about? What's a show that somebody could, have a good time with, Seth?
Should go check out that old Goosebumps podcast. We got Goosebumps. It's the perfect time to check out that podcast.
That's true.
Because we're in October. Halloween's right around the corner. And there are new episodes. It was on a brief hiatus for a little bit. But brand spanking new episodes. And if you're a first-time listener, you can go back and listen to those old episodes. They're all good.
Heck yeah. I'll shout out Drunk Friend, which is my Poly co-host Trav and SNES Drunk. They just had a great episode where they brought on Hungry Gorilla as a returning guest, which is maybe the absolute worst possible guest for like an October spooky season because she is so wholesome and polite and nice.
Yes.
But they're not really doing the spooky season thing. They're just bringing on cool people to talk. So I thought that was a good episode, as they all are. So you should go check that one out.
To keep on theme,
Josh, what do you got?
Sorry, to keep on thing with the month, we also have a podcast on there called Split Up about horror movies.
Yeah.
So check that out.
I really liked the episode they did about horror soundtracks. So if you like when we talk about all the indie game music here, that's a perfect entry point.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Well, that's going to do it for our show today. How about you guys both, or one of you, jump in and send out a good word for the folks out there?
Steve's got to make up for lost time. It's on him.
All right, my final word of the show is an apology to the listener. Because this episode, it was particularly noticeable to me. We constantly cycle between calling each other Blink, Drachma, and Frantic, or Steve, Seth, and Josh, which forces you to learn two names for all of us. You're all troopers. Thank you. If you're still listening to the last 3 seconds of the episode, my God, you're the best.
Maybe there's actually six co-hosts.
Oh, there's some really they have identical taste.
Spooky.
That's right.
Spooky. Goodbye.